Sometimes I feel like I should have never told them about the deepest parts of my heart, and if you have ever whispered those words to yourself, know that you are not alone, because almost everyone who has loved sincerely has experienced the quiet ache of wondering whether honesty was a mistake. Love has a beautiful way of inviting us to open doors that we once promised would remain locked forever. We tell someone about our dreams, our fears, our childhood memories, the moments that shaped us, the insecurities we try so hard to hide, and the hopes we secretly carry for the future. In those moments, vulnerability feels like a gift. It feels like trust. It feels like the beginning of something extraordinary. Yet when relationships change, when distance grows, or when someone responds with indifference instead of care, that same vulnerability can suddenly feel like a burden. We begin to question ourselves. We replay conversations in our minds. We wonder if silence would have protected us from disappointment. But perhaps the real lesson is not that honesty was wrong. Perhaps the lesson is that love requires courage, and courage always carries the possibility of pain. Think about a seed planted in rich soil. It does not know whether the season will bring sunshine or storms, yet it still grows because growth is its purpose. The human heart is remarkably similar. It was created not merely to survive but to connect, to understand, and to love. When you shared your truth with someone, you were not making a foolish decision. You were choosing authenticity over fear. That choice deserves compassion, not regret. One of the greatest misunderstandings about love is the belief that being vulnerable guarantees acceptance. It does not. Vulnerability simply reveals who is capable of holding your heart with kindness and who is not yet ready for that responsibility. This realization can be painful, but it is also incredibly freeing. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with questions, doubts, and what-ifs. Every step becomes exhausting because you keep asking yourself whether you should have stayed quiet. Yet what if the real weight is not your honesty but your self-blame? What if the peace you seek begins the moment you forgive yourself for trusting? Trust is not weakness. It is one of the strongest expressions of emotional maturity. Children trust naturally because they believe goodness exists. Adults often stop trusting because life teaches caution. Somewhere between those two realities lies wisdom, the ability to remain kind without becoming naive, to stay open without ignoring red flags, and to continue believing in love without pretending that everyone deserves unlimited access to your heart. There is something profoundly beautiful about people who continue to love even after disappointment. They are not ignoring their scars. They simply refuse to let pain become their identity. Every scar tells a story, not of failure, but of survival. Every disappointment reminds us that our capacity to care is still alive. The world often praises those who appear emotionally untouchable, but true strength is found in those who can say, "Yes, I was hurt, but I still choose kindness." That kind of strength transforms relationships, families, friendships, and even communities. Consider how often fear disguises itself as wisdom. After heartbreak, many people convince themselves that the safest life is one where no one gets close enough to hurt them again. At first, that strategy seems effective. There are fewer tears, fewer sleepless nights, and fewer disappointments. Yet there is also less laughter, less intimacy, fewer meaningful conversations, and fewer opportunities for genuine connection. A heart surrounded by walls may avoid pain, but it also prevents love from entering. Balance becomes essential. Healthy boundaries are not walls built from bitterness, they are doors with wise locks. They allow trustworthy people to enter while protecting your peace from those who repeatedly disregard your value. Sometimes the people we trusted never intended to hurt us. Sometimes they simply lacked the emotional capacity to understand what our openness required. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it reminds us that not every painful ending is rooted in cruelty. People carry invisible battles, unresolved wounds, and emotional limitations that influence how they love others. Recognizing this truth does not erase your hurt, but it can soften resentment. Forgiveness is not pretending nothing happened. Forgiveness is choosing not to let another person's actions permanently define your future. There is a quiet blessing in learning that your story is bigger than one person's response to your vulnerability. You are more than one conversation, more than one rejection, more than one goodbye. Every sunrise gently reminds us that endings are often disguised beginnings. Every season teaches that change is part of growth. Trees release their leaves without believing they have lost their beauty forever. They trust that new life will arrive in its proper time. Your heart deserves the same patience. If today you are carrying regret because you shared too much with someone who failed to appreciate it, remember this gentle truth: your honesty did not reduce your worth. Their inability to value it cannot erase its beauty. Love is not measured by how perfectly another person responds. Love is also measured by the courage it took for you to speak sincerely. There are people in this world who will treasure your authenticity instead of fearing it. There are relationships where your tears will not be seen as inconvenience but as invitations to understanding. There are conversations where your dreams will not be dismissed but encouraged. Yet before those relationships arrive, you must first become someone who speaks to yourself with the same kindness you once offered another person. Healing begins with the words you whisper when no one else is listening. Instead of saying, "Should have never told them," perhaps gently tell yourself, "I was brave enough to be real, and that bravery remains one of my greatest strengths." Those words carry hope. They transform regret into wisdom and pain into quiet confidence. Life has an extraordinary way of returning lessons wrapped in unexpected blessings. Sometimes the person who walks away creates space for the one who will stay. Sometimes the silence you feared becomes the peace you desperately needed. Sometimes unanswered love becomes the very experience that teaches you how deeply you deserve to be cherished. So if your heart feels heavy tonight, allow yourself to breathe without rushing your healing. You do not need to have every answer today. You only need enough faith to believe that your story is still unfolding. The love you gave was real, and real love is never wasted. It shapes your character, deepens your compassion, strengthens your resilience, and prepares your heart for healthier connections ahead. May you find comfort in knowing that every sincere act of love leaves behind a blessing, even when it arrives in a different form than expected. May your heart discover peace instead of regret, wisdom instead of bitterness, hope instead of fear.